Listener and supporter of the Black Hole Podcast. On this episode, it's mainly a lot of video, so I highly suggest that you go ahead and open it up on Spotify, or if you don't have Spotify, to go ahead and go to the Black Hole Podcast YouTube channel, so then that way you can watch and listen to Francisco Baptista's incredible presentation of his software, Team Sportz. So settle down, tuck in, and get ready for this new episode of Black Hole Podcast. I'll see you on the inside. Welcome to the Black Gold Podcast. Today with me, I have Francisco Baptista, and he is the founder of Team Sportz. It's an organization that uses AI technology to help players track their exercises effectively to ensure that they play well out on the field. And so, Francisco, first of all, what made you want to do Team Sportz? You're into basketball primarily, right?
Indeed, yeah. I always played basketball. I think, if we go back in time, I guess it stems from all my passion for sports and, of course, basketball myself. But then I guess the advent of AI and technology, so the big players, Google, Facebook, and Apple have been pushing for AI technology to be more and more available to everyone, which is fantastic. So leveraging their advent of AI and combining my technical skills, I'm a software engineer, with my passion, basketball and sports. So it can't go wrong. I guess where it started.
So in terms of you starting Team Sportz, has there been something like this before? Because it seems to be very unique in that when we talked previously, you said that it was different than the more common AI kind of technologies that are out there in the market right now, in that it is localized and it doesn't connect to the cloud. And can you explain more about that aspect of the technology?
Yeah, sure. I think the classic use of AI is sort of, collecting data, train models, and then continue retraining those models to sort of achieve the best sort of results on those models. And I think even there we start being slightly different than anyone else. So we use a very simple model that detects the human body. So when humans don't really change as much. So by leveraging very, very little of AI in that sense, and writing an algorithm on top of that, which then interprets what their body is doing, i.e. the movement. What is that you're doing with your arms and your legs? How you moving your body? And is there something that we know of, i.e. is this something that matches a push-up or a squat, etc.? So effectively, by already using AI just enough, we sort of avoid some of the pitfalls of AI. And effectively, it's our own algorithm that says, okay, hold on, let's interpret this movement without sort of having to use AI. So I guess different than other applications out there, people are training models to detect what a push-up is, to detect what a squat is, to detect what a sit-up is, or any other movement. And for us, we don't really care about what movement you're doing. So we created an agnostic way to track and understand how you're moving your body, and then translate that into statistics. In that sense, it is already sort of a unique approach. But Team Sportz goes further. So our model is running on a phone. And because we don't need data, we don't need to see you exercising. We don't have models running on the cloud. We've got a very single model. That model can run on your phone, and therefore our algorithm can also run on your phone. So you effectively are when you exercise using Team Sportz, it is live as it can be. That is happening on your phone, not on the cloud, which then brings other benefits to Team Sportz, which is by not having to record a video of you exercising, means it's private. So if there are kids exercising, or if you don't want to share sort of your background behind you, or no one needs to see that. So we're really just interested in the data, in the sports performance data. We're not in the, I like to say, we're not in the entertainment space. We are in sports performance data. So that privacy is very important, because then effectively opens up to the market. People might not be interested to have their video recorded and analyzed on the cloud. And also we gain an extra benefit because it's live and it's on your phone. We're not using cloud services, means that we can offer a solution that is affordable to pretty much everyone. So and there are quite a few unique selling points just on AI execution for Team Sportz there.
So one of the biggest benefits in terms of your model, your AI platform, is that it is localized. Nothing's being uploaded to the cloud, as you said. So you can have children running around in your house while you're doing your push-ups and stuff like that. And you don't have to be concerned about your kids, like the images of your children being out there for the whole world to see. And so that's really incredible in terms of how isolated it is, and yet how effective it is. And how does the model work? Like, will he be willing to share that with the audience? How the model works?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so the model is a very simple model. It's sort of a pose detection model, only detects the human body, nothing else. It doesn't do anything special. And that, again, just going back to, sort of a unique selling point, that is why Team Sportz is unique in a way. So we could go to a different approach, which would be, okay, let's train a model to detect a push-up. And that meant we would have to record and feed, thousands of images or videos of push-ups with all sorts of humans, with all sorts of push-ups, with all sorts of angles, etc., so that we wouldn't miss anything. And that would be just one model. And we think that it's just first there is not enough resources on anyone's phone to run these many models, right? So that's one thing. So that would invalidate using that on your phone. So we use a single model that detects your body, but that model itself doesn't know nothing of what you do. Absolutely nothing. It just knows where Moses' arms are, where his legs are, where the head is, and shoulders and hips, and nothing else. It is our own Team Sportz algorithm that then, once you move your body in front of the camera, is our own algorithm that says, hold on, now that I know what all the parts of the body are at any given time, let me understand what's going on here. And it's our own algorithm that runs through a sequence of positions and a sequence of movements, and understands, oh, hold on, Moses is doing some push-ups. Let me count that for him. So, and that's part of the beauty. So no AI, which means relying less on AI, means we can avoid some of the pitfalls. But for example, our model will work even if you have got a limb missing, or will work if you are in a wheelchair. Will work if you are a child. Will work if you are, because effectively our model is doing a very simple thing, which is, can I see a human there in front of the camera, not a chair, not a table, not anything else, just a human. And then it doesn't really matter if the human doesn't have full limbs, or doesn't have the limbs, or doesn't have the legs, still is, a human on a model. And because we rely very little on AI, only enough to understand, is that a human in front of the camera? Everything else is Team Sportz' own proprietary algorithm. Yeah.
That's really incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is one of our unique selling points. So we've managed to translate human movement in a sort of in a generic manner, which means our exercise editor enables you to create exercises specific to you, or or to your sport. So maybe you're playing American football, then you do a specific exercise in a certain way. So the coach will be able with a few clicks and say, this is the sort of movement that I want to track. Click, 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 press, deploy, that is in front of the players. A soccer coach might say, actually, this is the other movement that we want to track. Click, click, click. It's a new football exercise, soccer exercise, deploy in front of the players. And so, yeah.
Wow. And so that can then allow players to do certain exercises and certain trainings in such a way that it is as close to perfect as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. That's exactly the direction we're going. We don't, I think quantity is an important metric. So how many reps, how many sets you do, how fast. But also we understand that load management is really important to prevent, further injury if you already, are close to be injured or have been pushing, your body to an extreme. Equally important, it is understanding that you're doing exercise in the right form. And that is a marker that you don't see in many devices out there, which is in my form correct? And not doing things in the correct form create all sorts of anxieties and might lead to injury. So, and that's the direction we're going. So we already cracked the quantity side. So you can download Team Sportz app today and do some push-ups, sit-ups, some squats, etc. That's quantity, which is fantastic. But we are heading in a direction of quality. Is your form correct? And you will know that there and then at every rep. Maybe audio cue might ask you to correct your posture as you exercise, not after the fact, but during the exercise, which is really important. So before you cause any damage, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it helps you to ensure that everything goes smoothly. You're not overexerting yourself because that could happen. And you perform the action as perfectly as possible. That's nice.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
really nice.
And your coach is there all the way. So your coach can see, that you exercising, how you exercising, how much you exercising, when you exercising, etc., etc. So your coach has access to that data live pretty much. At the end of every exercise that you've done, your coach can see, Moses, okay, I can see you've done another 10, 20, or maybe 5 sets of 30 push-ups. And your coach might send you a quick message and say, Moses, I think it's about to stop. I can see that you are very keen, or you've been very keen in the last 3 days. Can you slow down a bit? Because I don't want you tired. We're going to have a match on Sunday, or whatever it might be. So, and that engagement between players and coaches, sort of that meaningful engagement, is sort of what Team Sportz really delivered for teams. So it's no longer a solution just for players, it's no longer a solution just for coaches. It's a solution for teams, and teams require that two-way communication be part of it. Yeah.
And so in terms of your own background, you're from Angola originally. Then it says in terms of doing the research for you, you went to Brazil and then you went
Yeah,
to Portugal after that. And
good memory.
over the course of many years. And so during that time, you didn't know the English language. And so at that time, what would you say drove you to learn English and to also then share your knowledge and share what you have done in English and make a mark in the world of coding, computing, and AI technology? Like, what would you say? What was that drive that you had to do that?
I guess having the right people around you really makes a difference in sort of the direction that you take your career, sort of the source that you drive your sort of inspiration from, etc. And I can name a few, big, very popular names here, but I think the biggest drive was ambition. So I never settle. I guess this can be said of me. Sort of, I need sort of that drive, that challenge. A little bit like the Mamba mentality. Sort of, whatever you can do, you can be good at, and just pursue and practice. So I think that definitely is the biggest drive. And yeah, life took me through to Brazil, where I studied my secondary school, I guess, and then to Portugal, where I started my career as software engineer. I wanted more for my life, and I decided to move to UK. It was supposed to be UK or Canada, actually. My brother was living in Montreal himself, and I thought, oh, having to learn French, having to learn English, I think, and I decided to learn English and move to UK, and yeah, but once you make that decision, that is not really negotiation, right? So that isn't, there wasn't a plan B sort of thing. Sort of, I think I can make my life or make a life in UK, and I came to UK to make a life. So there wasn't sort of an hesitation on, if things are harder, which admittedly in the very first year, not speaking, the language, etc., things were harder. But not having a plan B meant, you gotta push through, you gotta learn the language, you gotta sort of level up to make sure that you are, in the same place, in the right place, and the language is not a barrier. It's really important. And I would say, and maybe advice to anyone in similar circumstances and the world of today, a lot of us are immigrants. To me, was really important to understand sort of the 3 stages of language. So obviously training your hearing and be able to articulate the basic is kind of the first part of it. Be able to then think in English and dream in English, sort of the second part of it, when you start thinking to yourself and you sort of think in English and articulate the words in your head in English. That's sort of the second phase. But I think there is a third phase, which I reckon is really important, which is that the cultural, the understanding of the culture. And sometimes you'll be surprised where you find ways to understand the culture. So for example, to me, it was understanding sort of like, I'm 43 years old. So what cultural influences, 43-year-old British had when they were kids? What cartoons did they watch? What were their idols in sport? What TV series did they watch? What jokes became sort of cultural icons? The same way you've got cultural icon jokes, world, recognize that in US. You will have got the same those here in UK, and sort of understanding those nuances, those cultural nuances, effectively sort of is when you can say you sort of bridge that language barrier, and then everything else is game.
Yeah. And I think that one of the amazing things is whenever you see it's people who have immigrated to either the United States or the UK on game shows that require them to have cultural literacy. They need to know, as you said, like certain cultural icons, certain TV shows, certain knowledge of history of that period of the people. And so whenever, as you said, the 3 stages, basic understanding, then you have your dreaming, then you have your knowing the culture. I think that, yeah,
Yeah.
that's really fast. I never really thought about it that way before, breaking down language in those 3 tiers.
Yeah,
That's
don't
incredible.
quote me on it. Don't quote me on it. I'm a software engineer. I'm not a linguistic. I'm sure. I'm sure I heard that somewhere. But yeah,
Coding is its own
that's like
language too. So yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
How's it going so far?
Yeah, we are currently fundraising. So this is our a new round. So we had an initial pre-seed round last year, which effectively enabled us to move from sort of proof of concept MVP into a fully fledged product, which I shall demo to you in a couple of seconds. And but the signals have been quite positive. We achieved early revenue, which is sort of a good testament that this is actually a product that people are willing to pay for. And we have got about 1,500 plus players in the platform. And so it's going well. What to say, right? So, but of course, launching this as a product, properly in the market, both here in UK and we plan to go to US. We already received, I would say, half of our investment from US investors. So we feel the strong pull. I mean, from this podcast here, we feel that it's a huge market and interest in the US, and we know that this is what we need to do this year, which is raise a round that effectively is launching Team Sportz properly as a product in UK and the US market. And hopefully one day Nike will pay attention and might want to acquire Team Sportz. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So this is the full-fledged platform of Team Sportz, where coaches will come in to manage their teams, manage the coaches, players, manage their calendars. Nothing too exciting in that sense. I think part of the beauty of Team Sportz is that when the players exercise on the coaches can see the level of activity, breakdown between reps and sessions, when during the week players are exercising, most active players, most active teams and why, leaderboard of players, exercises, filter per day, or dive deep into a player profile and understand exactly what that player has been doing, both training analysis, but also in-game analysis, and so on and so on. So fantastic. But the beauty of it is how we have put this together. And so this is a live demo, so things tend to fail, Moses. So
failure is all good. Failure is learning.
So as you can see here, there are a series of exercises, and let me pick up some squats, for example. The beauty of Team Sportz is that in order to detect a squat, let me see if this model is going to load. Come on, don't let me down. Is it loading? No models in here. We'll refresh this again. If this comes back. Come on. Always live demos always. Live demos always. There we go. It's just taking some time. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So as you can see here, our AI is tracking this person doing some squats, and there is a variety of people doing squats in here. And I'm just going to play. So I'm just going to play the video. This is just a video of people doing squats, because imagine I am a coach and there is this exercise, in this case is a squat, that I want my players to do. So I came over here, I created a new exercise, I called it a squat, I add some information to it, uploaded a video, and now I want to apply some tracking, because remember, my players will have to point the camera on the phone to themselves and do that same movement, and the phone will have to count, how many squats they're doing, right? Cool. So how do we train our algorithm to understand what sort of movement this is? As you can see, algorithm can detect the squats. We're looking into sort of the variation in terms of time between reps and sessions. But most importantly, So this is sort of the holy grail where we're tracking the body precisely on a 3D space. And we can choose which parts of the body we want to track and create sort of this sequence of positions. Effectively, you say, I want to track the left upper leg, the right upper leg. I want to apply 20% tolerances. Then I want to track the leg again when you reach this position. And I want to apply 20% tolerance. And this is effectively enough for the algorithm to know which positions your body is in or is at, and track. It's as simple as that. Quite a few clicks, nothing else. No,
Huh.
exactly.
So with those numbers, what you can then do is you
Yeah,
can adjust like the depth of the squat, the height of the squat, and how people.
exactly. You
Wow,
can adjust how committed you are. Sort of, you could apply sort of higher tolerance. Let's say, you were a beginner or you were a child and you don't doing squats properly, etc. You can increase those tolerances. You can decrease those tolerances, and that will be enough to track their movement. So, and I'm referring to it a movement. Of course, we know that this movement is a squat, but this could be a movement that is alien to me or us, Team Sportz, but not alien to the coach uploading that video, wanting to track a specific movement. And then you can see sort of the application of these is quite amazing, because I could be a physiotherapist uploading sort of a shoulder movement of sorts or any other sort of, rehab physiotherapy movement, apply the tracking with a few clicks, deploy to my patients, and they could do it at home. And I'll be able to see how well they're doing, how often they're doing, when they're doing, and so on and so on and so on,
that's
without
incredible.
caring about what sort of movement it is. And there again is one of the USPs of Team Sportz. So effectively it is not just about democratizing access to performance data. We're literally providing coaches and teams and clubs the tools to actually leverage new technology without having to worry, hold on, but I can't write a line of code. Hold on, I don't even know how this tracking works. You don't have to know that. Just describe what you're trying to apply a few clicks and learn, obviously, how this interface works. And then you can replicate this to whatever movement you're interested to track, and then get your players to do it on the app privately, and you only get stats and numbers, etc. So that is Team Sportz.
Wow. So you said previously that people who are like in wheelchairs or have other disabilities, that they can also use this because everything is totally
Yeah,
customizable, right? In terms
yeah,
of angles.
exactly. Yeah,
What's wow.
yeah. And we do even have other sort of types of exercises, which are sort of more engaging exercises. So which are those where there are some virtual elements will appear on a screen. And I'll see if I find one here. So, but you can configure everything. You can configure if those elements are fixed or random on the screen. You can configure if they appear in the middle or on the bottom. You can configure how fast those elements will appear. Effectively, it's creating a little game. Let's see if I can find one here. As if this is gonna, hopefully we don't get any advertising. I'm gonna mute this. We're probably gonna get some advertising.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Surprise. I hope you can edit this.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I can edit
so
this
so
out.
so
Let me
so here
think.
we go. So this is me doing some ball control exercises, but as you can see, this is a very different exercise than sort of doing push-ups or squats, because my screen on my phone or my tablet will sort of show those virtual elements on the screen, and I need to reach out to them as fast as I possibly can. So let me see if there is another one. There we go. That was too late. I wasn't fast enough. There we go. I got that one. So this is a sort of is sort of the same technology. As you can see, I can configure this with just a few clicks and a few changes and a few drags and drops. Nothing really too fancy.
Wow. And so I'm curious, so you have it where each team is able to control exactly their own stats. They can see their own stats. They can upload it to a server specifically for them, right?
Right. That's correct.
Okay. And so is there any way for, let's say, Team A is going to play against Team B, and is there a way for Team B to look at the stats from Team A to see how they're
No,
going, how they're improving?
no, no,
So it's
no, no.
completely
That would be
localized.
that exactly. That would be a sort of, I guess, a competitive advantage for Team B, but not Team
Yeah.
A. So no. So I think there are things that Team B can do themselves if they want to, which is capture the other team stats. And this can be done in a few other ways. So for example, they can, let's say the Team B has recorded the game with Team A and they have uploaded the game into the platform. And if they want, they can, just mute this. If they want, they can analyze the game by saying, okay, this was a turnover, this was an assist, this was a pass. Oh, Team A now had a turnover, and that was a block, and that was a foul. And what it does, this starts keeping track of all the stats for us just underneath here, as you can see. So now it knows there was one pass for this team, there were one turnover for the other team, and so on, if that makes any sense. So as you can see the timeline of the video above, and if I press here, there was a field goal, for example. As you can see, that appears underneath here.
Yeah.
That at 34 seconds, there was a field goal. So any team can perform this sort of analysis, but that data, it is that data. The data that
That's
you
really
generate in
nice.
Team Sportz, the data that you generate in Team Sportz platform, whether it is game analysis or whether it is the training on the exercise that you saw the players doing on the app, stays for the team and for the players and obviously your teammates. It doesn't leak out. So remember, we're building a solution for teams. So team is a construct that already exists, and Team Sportz is effectively a conduit providing tools and access to sports technology to that team. So
Yeah. So it's kind of like in a similar way that, say, Nike has a running app, and certain teams can utilize that app for the purpose of running faster, getting more endurance in the same way. Okay.
That's correct. And I think the only difference is that some of those technologies will require you to acquire a special hardware or a wearable of some sort. And we think whilst there is a value on wearables, the hardware can produce, certain stats that pure computer vision cannot produce. For example, if you're playing, if you practice or playing American football or rugby, computer vision cannot detect impact. So, when the forces between, so when you bump someone else, another player, you can't predict that force with an impact with computer vision alone. So that is definitely a space for hardware tracking as a data input. However, those hardwares are very limited because they often just track an individual player, and there isn't really a platform that brings all together with your coach, with everyone else, and sort of brings in a meaningful way for a team to leverage the output of their hardware in a context of improving your physical performance, but then tie that in with the game. And this is where Team Sportz sort of excels as a platform, because we not just help coaches and players, teams to stay organized, games practice, scheduling, etc., all that good stuff, but also understand training and remote training and enabling remote training, but also enabling in-game analysis, as you saw, for example, that by analyzing video and creating highlights, etc. All of that is Team Sportz. Yeah.
And so with that timeline, what you could then be able to do much, much more quickly is you can assess the game in such a way so much quicker than your, say, opponent who doesn't have Team Sportz. And then you can see exactly where player one messed up when defending, or you can see exactly where player two needed to go further out. And so you can understand that like this is
Yeah.
something that people will definitely like, especially in the United States, Texas football is huge in Texas. And so
Yeah.
understanding like being the best in football in Texas, that's huge. And so utilizing this software with
Yeah.
people who are wanting with different coaches, different teams, looking to find a way to analyze their players in such a way that they can
Yeah.
perform at their absolute peak best. This is
Exactly.
incredible software. It's super
Exactly.
powerful.
And so just to revisit this, so and the analysis here doesn't stays on sort of understanding what happened during the game. So let's say, for example, this game is happening, and as a coach, I saw something here. Anyway, this ball went out. Let's pick something a more exciting moment. There's a rebound there, and I go, okay, that was a pass. Let's just say, for example. So as you can see, there is a tag here counted as one pass. It's fantastic. So I'm going to click on this. And effectively, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a 10-second snippet of that video, uh, live demos. So bear with me. But effectively, what this going to enable the coaches to do is to dig deep into that analysis and be able to say, okay, you should have been here, you should have been there. So, and be able to sort of draw a few things and draw on the game and say, it should have happened. And then this, you should have been over here, and so on and so on, and provide sort of meaningful feedback on what really happened on this game, this play. And then obviously share all these analysis and these drawings and sort of that feedback with the players, so the players can see, oh, this is what went wrong, or this is what went amazingly well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in the way you treat it like you would like a regular playbook, just sort of as you demonstrated with the circles and the arrows and okay. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
really
Exactly.
fascinating.
Yeah. But coaches can bring their coaching philosophy effectively and say, actually, you know, here's a play that we might have won or we might have lost, but the coach might actually see certain aspects of that play that I might not be, obvious to everyone else. And we provide those tools for the coach effectively, bring their philosophy to the table and share that back with the players. Say, I can see your score over here, but really this only happened because Moses effectively, stretched himself, away from his position, above and beyond, hustled that ball on the floor, picked it up. And that's sort of that was intensity and sort of the work that they took for us to win this play, and highlight that and say, that is the sort of work that I want you guys to put it on the floor and share back with the player. Yeah.
Wow. And so with this, you demonstrated with the squat, you can adjust like certain height and width in terms of the way that you interact with the model. And so with that, can you adapt a model to your own personal sport? Say if it wasn't like a team sport, say if it was golf, you're trying to analyze the perfect swing. Can your
Yeah,
model
yeah, yeah.
do that?
Yeah, you can. Remember that for you to detect that, you still have to place that phone somewhere in a golf course, sort of somewhere in the floor, I guess, against a water bottle or you know a club, a bag of whatever, so that you can actually see, the camera can see you doing that swing. So yes, there is no reason why you can use this. The reason why we created to analyze movement agnostically to whatever movement it is it precisely because of that. We didn't build Team Sportz to be a football solution. And today we've got basketball teams, we've got netball teams, we've got rugby teams using the platform, and a couple of five-a-side football teams. So that's precisely because we have solved those problems, and it works for whether you want to analyze maybe a golf player movement. But yeah.
Wow.
A lot of work to do. So if any investors are listening in, please jump in. We've got an open round and help us, provide sports technology to everyone in the world. I guess is sort of achieving the success that Uber did, which is providing sort of access to transport and connecting drivers and coaches affordably. Yeah.
That's incredible. And so, in terms of further customization, is there a way to, you had, whenever you were marking stuff on the timeline, you had different designations for each action, like you had your field goal, you had your block. Can one change those designations to their personal sport to help them
Yep,
understand it
exactly.
better?
Yeah, exactly. So the platform doesn't force you into any way. So create as many tags as you want and call them whatever is meaningful to you. Analyze your games. Because remember what I said earlier, we want your coaching philosophy to sort of to be used on the Team Sportz platform. So we don't want to force you to analyze the game in a certain way, because we can't possibly guess how you're going to analyze the game and how any other coach will analyze the game. So create your own tags and analyze the game the best of your ability and share that back with your players. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that I know about you is that you are a huge Kobe Bryant fan. And in fact,
Yeah.
you have something that is very precious to you. And
Yeah, I've got a ball signed by Kobe. I've got a ball signed by Kobe Bryant. Was in Colorado
wow.
a few years back. I nearly sold it because of Team Sportz. Like, I know, strapped for cash. You know what it's like. And
Yeah.
then he passed away, and I was like, oh, glad I didn't,
No, you
man.
can't tell that. Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Oh man.
I keep saying, I nearly sold that ball, strapped for cash, sort of wanting to build Team Sportz. And then obviously tragically he passed, and I was so glad that I haven't sold that ball. So that ball's gonna stay there, gets cleaned, more often that than my car, maybe my desk. and yeah, so I am a big Kobe fan, and yeah, very proud of saying so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you say Kobe really influenced you in terms of not just as like in your personal playing style, but also in the way that you view your company and your personal life?
I wish Kobe has influenced me as much, in playing as he did professionally. I think I would have been a better basketball player. I think Kobe was relentless, so had that sort of work ethic that effectively drove him to perfection. So I think I can relate to that. I don't go to sleep if a problem is bothering me. Now, that is obviously the flip side of that, right? So that sort of relentless Mamba mentality, might not be conducive to sort of, a rested mind, etc. One needs to find the balance, and that balance is different from different people. And that going back to that influence, that Mamba mentality, sort of that pursuit of micro increments. So if you can gain a micro increment today in whatever that you do, and you can gain another micro increment tomorrow, it might not be noticeable, in a day to day, but actually at the end of 6 months, at the end of 1 year, it makes a huge difference. And that definitely is a Kobe Bryant influence and sort of my work ethic. And yeah, very proud to say so.
Wow, that's incredible. And so, who else would you say was really influential in helping you to build Team Sportz? Did you have any mentors specifically that helped you learn coding, helped you to communicate with people and understanding your vision for your service and for your product?
Where to start, really, Moses? So I think I think it is fair to say that throughout my life, I have had many people that influence my life. So some has very specific sort of time span influence, but that influence was enough to sort of further my career and my life. I'll give you a classic example. So the person that gave me my first job when I was a young lad as a software engineer, not having any experience, not knowing that I could make money and writing code, today is my CTO working with me building Team Sportz. So that, that just shows sort of that influence, although it happens sort of in a period of time, it actually never stops. So you build those connections, that's effectively those influencers, and sort of that inspiration is always there. It's always available if you want to. Building Team Sportz specifically, I think obviously, my wife enables me to do these crazy hours. I cannot say, I cannot go without mentioning that, this is not possible if you don't have that sort of immediate, close and support, because it's unfeasible otherwise, really. But throughout specifically building Team Sportz, I have had a few mentors, and some of them have mentored me for free. Sort of, they simply said, Francisco, I will help you, and free of charge. And I think one of the first ones, someone that was introduced to me randomly in a conference, Amanda McKenna. It took me about 8 months to get a coffee with Amanda, and when I finally had a coffee with Amanda, she said to me, "I think you don't have anything here. You don't have a business," because in my head, instead of Team Sportz, it was already a done deal. But it was only in my head, and she could have just turned around and said, "Look, you don't have anything here. I'll sort of walk away. Come back to me when you've got something." And instead, she said, "Let's have one call a month, and I will help you. So figuring out what you have and where you need to be." And we did this for nearly 2 years. So one call a month, sometimes more, but free of charge and no strings attached, no equity, no payment for sorts, other than I was someone that genuinely needed some help, and there was someone that genuinely thought it could help me. And then further down the line, I met Lisa. Lisa has been a game changer for Team Sportz, because I approached her sort of, knowing, where am I going to fundraise? Like, I don't know any investors, like most people, I don't come from any money. And I said, "Look, I need help. A friend of mine recommended you to me. I'm reaching out to ask for some help." And again, Lisa said, "I'll help you. No strings attached." And she's been, she obviously started as sort of a mentor and helping me and introducing and open her network, then became my lead investor. And when Lisa said, "Yes, I actually going to invest in Team Sportz," out of the blue, I went a bit tearful on at that moment. And then, but then, everyone else, and yes, and that's how the first round of investment really happened, sort of triggered by Lisa. Again, someone that, I reached out for help, and she said, "Yeah, you know what, I'll help you." And it is, and this is interesting. So I think advice to me, to any founders out there that might be in the same situation, and I speak to a few, and they think, "Do I need to give equity away for advice and etc.?" Look, in some cases you might have to. I was fortunate enough that I put the card on the table and I said, "I need help." So literally, sort of, I need help, sort of, and I guess maybe I asked a genuine people that said that they would help me, and And the help came in many forms. So obviously, in the very early days, Amanda McKenna was sort of working with me through thinking about sort of, how far you are from having sort of even a prototype, something viable that could, resemble a business. It was very early days. But what it worked for me, and I guess is my advice, is that take their help in whatever form it comes. Lisa, for example, in addition to sort of the hard sort of parts of the business and forecasting and sort of all sort of that sort of hard skills development, etc. She's also interested if I'm resting enough, if I am going on a date with my wife, if I am let's sit down on my couch and I've got this personality test that I wanted to take you through it. So is that help might come in different forms and shapes, but yeah, you got to take that help, because there is always an element of discovery, of self-discovery, or an element that will will further your position, because at some point those dots will click. They might not click and right at the moment. You might think, oh, why do I need a personality test? I kind of know myself very well. But you'll be surprised sort of what sort of not just what you discover, but what other people are able to discover, about you, etc. And there opens sort of a much closer connection and between people. So again, sort of, I'm rambling here, but definitely there's been a lot of people, a few people. Again, I just mentioned a couple, but there's quite a few that genuinely sort of, hey, I'm going to help you. You. Yeah.
Wow. And
Lots of
so,
influencers.
yeah. And so, in terms of, as you said, asking for help and having people help you in such a way, because that one call a month for, was it over a year, is what you said?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. Like
Yep.
like from someone who's skilled in that field, and that the time that they have is very limited and that they offer it to you. That is
Yep.
really incredible. And it's the
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
in terms of what I've seen, it's the people that whenever you give something like that to them, especially immigrants, especially people who have had to like really work and like go through the muck and through the mire and work their way up the ladder, that
Yeah.
they really appreciate and they really take that to heart, and they really, as you are doing and have done, you really pay it back in
Yeah.
incredible and vast amount of ways. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, it's sort of, the advice is sort of ask for help, because I think I am a sole founder, so this journey already is lonely enough. So it's ask for help, be humble to ask for help, take help when help is available. And that help might come in ways that you don't know how to connect those dots in a way. So you might be expecting, I want this in the shape of A, and their help comes in the shape of B, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to stick to the process, because help is help. And by doing it, so you also demonstrate to people that want to help you that you are listening, that you are open to, that was a genuine call for help. And that often translates in sort of an authentic connection between the two of you, which you never know. That person might just have a different way to help you with A, but the person started with a B. You sort of, you thought, should it be A? A is my answer, or that's what I want. And the person like, no, I'm helping you in this way. You're going to go to B, C, and D, and maybe you end up in A for the shape of the A. But yeah, so yeah, that's for help.
Yeah.
It's my tip.
Yeah. And the other thing about asking for help is whenever you see something that can help, take it. Because what most people think of, it's like that story about the guy who asked God to save him when his house is flooding. And like
Yeah,
all these
that's right.
different, like a boat comes by, it's like, no, God will save me. Helicopter comes by, God will save me. And then he ends up going to heaven. It's like, God, how come you didn't save me? It's like, dude, I sent you a boat and helicopter. Like, come on. And so
Exactly.
you gotta like take what you see in front of you, and
Yep.
then what happens usually is that you end up working your way up the ladder to whatever your goal is in terms of what you really need and what you really desire. And so, yeah, just take whatever you need. And whenever someone offers you help, take it
Yep.
and then go to the next thing, go to the next thing, go to the next thing, and always
Yep.
thank them for that help that they gave to you. Because
Of
without
course, of
that,
course.
you wouldn't have
Yep.
been able to go to the next upper rungs. And so, yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
definitely, that's
Yep.
incredible
Yep.
testament to the power of help. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, you gotta trust the process, right? So if you can't figure out what is the process to achieve your goals and you asking for help, that call has to be genuine enough, and you need to be open to trust their process to get you to your goals. Well,
Yeah.
also a version of those goals, right? So you gotta trust that process. So same way you would trust your own process, this is how I get to this place, and you trust that sort of almost blindly, right? You could have taken a different route, but because it's so often easy for us to trust sort of our own process. When you ask for help, you gotta trust someone else's process. Really
Yeah.
important, yes. Yeah.
And so how many years have you been working on Team Sportz?
Through and through, from the very first day that I draw diagrams in my notebook, I would say 3 years. Yeah.
Wow. And so doing it over the course of a pandemic, a global pandemic, especially in the UK, where I know that restrictions there have been like very, very much like lockdown is lockdown over
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so how were you able to create this incredible software under those conditions?
So I think there was, lockdown was horrible for many people, and obviously pandemic was horrendous for everyone else. But actually, it was good in some ways for team sports. I mean, of course, we could say games were not happening and coaches were not interested. But one of our case studies was that the training, the AI piece, effectively gives coaches the ability to train a player remotely. So let's say, Moses, you are the coach. We play on Monday, and maybe you're going to practice on Wednesday. Every Wednesday we practice, and then every now and then on Monday we play. What about the rest of the time? How can you get me to stay fit for the games in the following week and so on? And the lockdown was effectively the perfect condition to demonstrate that, because there was no practice for games, was only the ability to train someone else remotely. And so it was ideal because it enables us to first to come up with a case study with Manchester University. So the coach really loved Team Sportz, and admittedly, back then, Team Sportz was in much need of many, many lines of code. And and but regardless of that, the AI piece enabled them to do exercises remotely. And what we found through the data was that compared to the exercise post-pandemic, is that exercising remotely, the coach was able to increase the level of activity in 5 times. So it was a perfect case study for us. That's sort of one of the positive sides of the lockdown in terms of team sport. The other side of team sports was that a few of the team members were working part-time, and because there was no more social gatherings, there was no more birthday parties, there was no more outings and drinks, there was plenty of time to write code. So we actually were able during lockdown to produce, and develop a lot of team sports during lockdown, because, what else could you do, right? Sort of write code or go to sleep sort of thing. And yeah, so actually the lockdown was not bad at all for Team Sportz, enabled us to sort of focus and develop our own algorithms as test. And we had a team that were, remote, sort of stranded like everyone else, sort of not able to play in lockdown, using Team Sportz as sort of a way to stay fit and active, which generated as an amazing case study to show the increased level of activity that the coach, can tap into if they come into the Team Sportz platform. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, as you said, it's the idea that everything's virtual and this is super simple because, as you said, it's just, you take your phone, you point, you shoot, and then that's how it works. And so doing that, it just makes things so much simpler for everybody. As you said, you can do exercises at your home. You can do them like in the gym. You can do them wherever you are. And so there is no, in a way, that there's no excuse for you not to do your exercises. And there's
Exactly.
also just an infinite amount of places where you can do your exercises.
Yeah.
So there are no limitations for you
Exactly.
to do what you need to do. Yeah.
And increases that accountability, right? Because today coaches are used to sort of broadcast content to the players. And they go, here's some videos of some exercise for you to do. Or go to this YouTube channel and do those exercises. Or here's some, WhatsApp videos I'm sending to you guys for you to exercise. So they don't know. There is no accountability. They don't know who did it, who didn't do it, etc. And so these bring sort of that piece of accountability, which is both a peace of mind, but also a way for coaches and players to engage in meaningfully, right? So it is less about Moses, this week you haven't done anything, but actually I can see the last 2 weeks you've been sort of achieving your goals and your training goals. What's going on this week? Is there something happening? And that is a different it's a more meaningful conversation because, I can tell this is not you because I understand, you are committed and you train, regularly. And if that stops, something might be happening. So let's have a chat and so on. So yeah.
Well, this is some really incredible software and really, really incredible just organization and team you put together for this. So, Francisco, thank you.
Thank
Very
you, Moses. No,
Yeah.
thank you.
And
Very kind
so,
word.
so I have a question for you, and that is, who has been, I'm sure I know what the answer is going to be, but who has been an influential part of you, who you are, your makeup? What Black figure, historical or fictional, has been influential in allowing you to create Team Sportz and to create the person that you are today?
Oh, it's a tough question. So look, I grew up in Angola and very early in my life, sort of, I was aware of Nelson Mandela. Sort of, obviously, he wasn't the leader that he became when I was young, but I was acutely aware of Nelson Mandela. So it is the historical figure. That's definitely someone that I guess I read about and I follow and I admire, like many, sort of how how uh, the ultimate underdog, can overcome sort of all the odds and become someone that can shape the culture in the country and sort of eliminate apartheid and everything else, and so graciously as well as he has done it, right? So could have been much worse, sort of, on the flip side of it, and that's not where his heart was. And so which speaks of his testament, sort of, that the hardship of imprisonment and everything else that he went through really didn't change who he is or was as a person. So definitely someone that as a historical figure that I admire. Of course, Kobe Bryant. I play basketball, so if Kobe Bryant played in any other team, I wouldn't be wearing a Lakers t-shirt. I would be wearing whatever team he played on. So I would just sort of follow around, like, doesn't matter which team you play to, you know. But I'm gonna have to step back out a bit out of this, because the reason why I started playing basketball was because of my mom. My mom used to play basketball when she was young, and I remember sort of, she had this drawer in her room with some newspaper cuttings, a photo book back then, when people used to have photo books, and there was some newspaper clippings of her winning, local trophies, and I remember so vividly, going very often, to look into those newspaper clippings, and sort of wanting one day sort of to be winning a local trophy myself. So, I cannot, go without saying that, my mom played a huge influence in who I am as a person. We grew up in Civil War, and sort of, our proximity, sort of to our parents, and sort of what our parents, how my father and my mom dealt with Civil War and what was happening. It makes a mark on anyone, whether you like it or not. Gladly, there's a positive mark, and sort of, I guess, that, carry me through life, and sort of, that so far that doesn't seem a barrier that I don't feel like I can cross, sort of. And I can see plenty of examples historically, or not, figures that sort of were able to sort of overcome sort of infinite sort of odds against them, and still sort of surpass them, and inspire others. So yeah, I I I've got plenty of people that influenced me, and I'm glad to say they've all been very, very positive.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so I have one final question for you. And that is, if you had the ability to send a worldwide text, what would your message be?
Oh my. Ah, God. There are so many problems I would like to say in that message. How long that message can be. Look, I think it is very pertinent today, in the events that are happening today. I am a child of war, and I'm here speaking to you today because of the people that looked after me, and sort of still were able to convince me or inspire me that actually you can do anything, despite sort of the circumstances you were born in. And that message couldn't be more relevant today, right? With with the war in Ukraine, and just before that, the Iraq, and the Syria, and so on, and so, if there was a message to the world, I guess, make peace, abandon arms, and let's focus on sort of real problems and real issues that mankind faces. Whether it's the weather, sort of the weather, or the famine and disease. There are so many really hard issues that stops, a lot of people in the world, and sort of in their tracks, not having access to clean water, etc. And I think war is terrible, and it is never, ever, ever a place where winners can emerge. There is no winners in war, only losers. It is one of those deals. It's probably the worst, activity the world ever engaged with, because there is no winner to it. Yes, but yeah, that would be kind of the gist of my very long tweet to the world. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Francisco, very much for walking us through Team Sportz. That's a really incredible platform that you've
Yes,
built and created. So thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Moses. Now, pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.